Good morning, everybody. I hereby call to order this meeting of the Fence Viewer Field Driver Committee. Just for your information, this meeting is being audio and video recorded for later transmission over YouTube, possibly Channel 9, I'm not sure. So I have another copy of the check agenda, please, thank you.
The first page is the site visit, the second page is.
Okay, so we're here to discuss an issue that was brought to us about a fence problem. We just finished a site visit to 2298 and 2308 Pleasant Street. So I think I'd like to give my opinion, what I think is going on here, and try to ask how we can somehow come to a resolution. In my opinion, what I saw, both on the site visit, what I see in the photographs here, we also have a piece of software in the assessor's office that we use that allows us to go back historically and see past in time what the situation was. And this looks like it's a bump in the wall. It's a bump in the wall that's been there forever, as far as we can tell. There was a discussion about.
If I may say, before the board reaches any conclusion or decision or voices opinions, it is my understanding that at this hearing, the petitioner, which is me, has an opportunity to give input,
Of course.
which I was unable to do, specifically to exactly address one of the comments you're about to make.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. This is fair and open. I want to, come to some resolution that can work for everybody. I'm just simply, I'm trying to kick it off by saying what I believe to be the situation is that this has been there for a very long time. But it also, in my opinion, looking at, I got photographs that I took, but looking at the site, the bump in the wall is very clearly, in my opinion, over the property line. But it's been that way forever. So, does any other members want to comment before I open up to the floor?
I'd like to get a presentation on both sides.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Let's start with Mr. McKeon.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members.
Just state your name.
My name is, yes, sorry. My name is William McKeon. I have a property at 2308 Pleasant Street, which my wife and I own as trustees. We are recently Florida residents, having lived in Dayton for 35 years or so. To begin my presentation, I have with me 3 sets of records, principally deeds and plans that are public records, which I would like to present, if I may. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Member, Madam Clerk. And I'll be referring to those in a minute. One thing I would like to point out to the members of the board is that the McKeon property is what is called registered land. I'll be referring also to the Carton property, which is on the north side of the Kane property, which is also registered land. And the Kane property is recorded land. If you're unfamiliar with registered land, what it is an owner of property goes to the Land Court of Massachusetts and files a petition for registration to have the metes and bounds of the property established permanently and which cannot be challenged. It is a court judgment and decision. By history, my property for many years was owned by the Spooner family. And in the 1930s, during the Depression, the property fell into tax title. And the town of Dayton actually owned it for a period. And it was actually the town of Dayton that started the registration proceeding in the land court for my property. So it is the town that initiated it, and the land court did issue a registration. In connection with that, they hire a land court registered engineer who surveys the property, will make exact measurements. In some cases, will record the compass bearing in degrees, minutes, and seconds for the direction of the wall. In some cases, they will do the angle in degrees, 90 degrees, 78 degrees. Sometimes they do both, but it's not required. So both the Cartons and the McKeons have registered land. I've supplied to you the deeds for all three properties, McKeon, Kane, and Carton, and I've also supplied to you the plans of the land court. The Kane deed describes it as being completely bound by stone walls, on the McKeon side in two places and on the Carton side. The distances are virtually identical. If you look at the McKeon deed, if I can point out to you, one of the common walls and the one that we're talking about on the McKeon deed says 353 feet, 0.99, okay? 353.99. In the Kane deed, it says 353.86. However, the Kane deed says about 353.86, so more or less. So respectfully, the length of the property wall is really not an issue. The two deeds differ by 0.13 feet, which is about 1.5 inches in length.
Thank you, I was just gonna do the math on it.
Yeah, I did it already, thank you. It's about 1.5 inches, but the land court plan clearly shows that the full length of the wall is a straight line with no deviation, no different compass bearings, no angles to a drill hole. If I may approach, and if I can just point out on Mr. Easterday's plan, we were out looking at this area right here. I'm sorry, I thought it's right here. And you see there's the shed here, the yellow shed, which we all saw. And if you look in the corner, there is a tiny letters, DH. That stands for drill hole. And that's right at the corner. And you'll see that there's a drill hole there, okay? And you'll see that the line of 353.99 has no deviation. There's no angles or anything. But the angles for all the lines are here. Once to the south of me where it says Lizzie D. Cole, that's now property of Ron and Sarah Marino. And you will see, however, that is not a complete straight line going all the way back to the railroad tracks. There's two places where there's a very, very slight angle change of about 1 degree, okay? So in my position, I say that this should be a straight stone wall with no bulge, no bulge behind the shed that's out there.
So, if you're finished.
No, I'm not finished, but, so there is a drill hole in a stone, which we did find, okay? Because of the condition of the wall, I think that rock that we saw the drill hole in is not precisely in the place it ought to be because the wall has been disturbed and with it, that drill hole. More or less, it's in the same place. I would say give or take 6 inches or so. But clearly, no matter where that drill hole is, there is a bulge which extends to the McKeon property. Within that bulge is a pile of wood and also a sign that we saw, okay? The Canes also recently installed a septic system. And the septic design was by a civil engineer named Mark Rodericks. And he filed a septic plan, a stamped plan that was accepted and approved by the town of Dayton. And I have submitted that with my original letter, 2 sections of it. It's a public document, it's free to view, it's not copyrighted. And frankly, the town can take a look at any of the documents that it has on record with regard to this hearing. And you will see that there are 2 things. One is Mr. Rodericks shows the common boundary line to be a complete straight line from the drill hole all the way out to Pleasant Street, and he shows that it is a stone wall. I have spoken twice with Mr. Rodericks. I've known Mr. Rodericks personally for close to 30 years. He's done a fair amount of work in Dayton, including the engineering work for one of the wharfs that's in front of our house. The one that's just to the south of Marino had quite a bit of engineering work, and he did the drawings for that. But Mark confirmed to me as recently as Friday when I spoke to him personally, in person, that the stone wall is indeed a straight line. It is the property line, and it is a stone boundary. There's no different property line somewhere other than on the stones. Just have a few more things, and thank you kindly for your patience. I would like to talk to the length of time that the bulge has been in existence, because Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned that. And I also did have an opportunity to listen to the YouTube of the last meeting, which I thought was a meeting scheduled only for setting a date for the viewing, but apparently there was more commentary that was made. Comments on the lichen. Okay. Lichen is on every single stone on every part of the wall. Whether it was disturbed or undisturbed, the wall in its proper place has lichen all over it. Where it was disturbed and where there are rocks on the ground, it's got lichen all over it. I have supplied to you, I'm sorry, I have it here because it's just too long. But I looked up lichen, and lichen indicates that it can, this document indicates that lichen can grow at the rate of up to 500 millimeters per year, which is 16 inches. All right, typically it grows slower than that, but the fact that it has lichen on it doesn't mean that it's tens or hundreds of years old. It could grow very quickly. Also, as to Mr. Chairman's comment about how long that bulge has been there, it wasn't there at the time the land court was out there surveying, and the land court clearly shows that it's a straight line, and that has to be accepted by this board because there's a court.
Didn't you say that land court, that was back in the 40s or something?
Yes.
That was a long time.
Yes, no doubt, it was in the 40s, but it wasn't centuries ago, as has been stated to this board in its last meeting here. I think that's about all I have. The result that I would like to have, more than anything, is to have the wall restored. Since being in Dayton for nearly 40 years, we've made great efforts to have all parts of our property, the grounds and the houses and the outbuildings, kept in good shape and being in good repair. I have contacted a couple of masons who came out to take a look at the wall at my cost to have the wall restored, and never discussed with my neighbor participating in the cost of repair. And then I think a day or two after the second mason was out there, there was a no trespassing sign put up, I presume by my neighbors, in the area of the bulge, which I frankly think is within my own property. So they put a no trespassing sign on my property to stay out. As a result of that, I contacted this board to do two things. One is to indicate where that line is, which is a straight line, and to have an order that the wall be repaired. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. You actually answered the questions I was going to ask you. Kingpin would like to speak?
Yes, I would like to speak. David Tibbetts, 2298 Pleasant Street in Dayton. I'm going to start with the deeds. Those are the instruments that take precedence as to where the description of the land is. The Keynes deed calls for a stone wall along that boundary. And because it does call for the stone wall becomes the monumentation of that line. McKeon's deed does not call for a stone wall, it calls for the abutter. Neither deed has a bearing along that line. Both deeds describe a distance with some discrepancy in the distance. But there is no bearing. So there is no direction on that line. It then has a distance. So monumentation takes precedence over bearing. Bearing takes precedence over distance. So that's the order in which what's most important when you're following deeds to try and determine lines.
So if I may ask you, is what you are arguing is that bulge is part of your property?
It's the stone wall, which is the boundary between the property lines.
I understand the stone wall is the property boundary,
Yes,
but you're suggesting that bulge means that if I were to look at the map here, it's going to go down and all of a sudden we'll see a little bulge because that's your property. Is that what you're suggesting?
if you're looking at the plan,
I'm
okay,
sorry, it's just illustration purposes only. I'm saying if you were to draw a plan of your property, would it have a little bulge at the bottom?
if I were to survey that property, I would make a drill hole at every angle in that stone wall, from the street to the drill hole in the back. And then attach to those bearings and distances between the,
So that's not the question I was asking. What I'm trying to differentiate is, are you saying that is your land and therefore you have a right to put a wall there? Or are you saying that, hey, that's just the wall, the way the wall is? Are you arguing the property line? That's what I'm trying to
I'm
ask.
arguing what McKeon is interpreting as a property line based on what he's told you as a straight line. So yes, that is the Keynes property.
So I still feel like you got to answer.
I don't know, I think I just wanna make sure I understand it. So what you're saying is that is the demarcation line between the two properties, but it doesn't have accurate bearings. So it may have moved, not moved, we don't have current accurate measurements to determine, right? If the wall moves this way, it's on somebody's property. If it moves that way, it's on somebody's property. You can't move and then stay that person's property, right? I mean, if it's a demarcation line between the two and it fails one way or the other, then it could technically be on somebody's property if it fails to the right or fails to the left.
So that was the second.
That's kind of what you were asking, right?
I'm trying to differentiate the two questions.
Yeah, I think what he's doing is saying it doesn't have any true bearings, right? What Bill's saying is, back in the day, it was done, registered, as they did the work.
Yeah.
Over time, if that wall moves, you don't have accurate bearings anymore. So he's saying it's not accurate bearings.
But I don't
Am I understanding that or no?
If there are no bearings, there were
There were
no
no
bearings.
bearings done back in the day.
Correct, but because it calls for the stone wall, wherever the stone wall is the property line. And it is not a straight line from the street all the way back. There are meanders and angle points all the way up the stone wall.
Well, there's two angle points here that Bill pointed out, so like 1 by 3 or so, but that's on the other side. So you're saying that could be the case on your side?
There are angle points all the way up the stone wall. This happens to be an angle point
This is a significantly, I won't accept that. Yeah, sure, I'm sure it probably wanders an inch, as, this bulge is significant. This is probably 2 feet or something like that. It's not a tiny little change. And I still feel like you haven't answered my question, is are you saying that that land inside the bulge belongs to you?
Yes.
So, go ahead.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So what I'm trying to figure out, we have a drawing, a plan dated 1923, and this property was registered. And then you said there were no bearings along the way. Well, how does what you're saying now connect to the work that was done in 43 when this whole thing was registered, the plan was drawn? I'm trying to figure this out. I understand what's been said about how a stone wall can move. I mean, I understand that. But I'm trying to understand what you're saying, starting with this 1943 deed, when this land was registered, and when this plan was drawn. How does that relate to what you're saying now?
In order to interpret that plan, you would have to look at the 1943 deed description. Most deed descriptions continue as a chain of title in description as to what that deed, original deed from 43, would have said. The current deed only calls for an abutter, which makes the McKeon property subservient to the Kane property. Wherever the Kane property is based on the wall becomes the property line. Wherever that wall is, McKeon's property says it comes up to the Kane's property. Kane's call for the wall is there. The wall appears to be in the same position for decades. Then the wall becomes the property, and that's Kane property on the north side of the wall, all the way up the property line.
How does the deed wording subsequent to the initial plan and the registering, how does the deed wording change what was the original document we're looking at?
We don't know if it has a chain of title to go back to the 40s to see what the deed description said back then as to whether or not the deed had changed. But right now, the most current instrument that describes the properties is McKeon's abuts the landowner to the north. Kane property calls for the stone wall.
So
Wherever the stone wall exists, that's where the Kane property goes to.
So if I may, I think that's the fundamental discrepancy is that, hi Karen.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so, let me just
No,
understand.
let me finish. I wanted to define the actual problem, and that's why I was asking the question so hard, is that I believe the fundamental dispute is that one deed specifies a straight line. The other deed of the neighbor specifies a wall. The straight line is straight and clear, to be very obvious. The wall is malleable, it can move. And I would say, looking historically, it did move at some point. I don't know whether it was 10 years ago or 100 years ago, but it did move at some point.
If it was built that way, it may not have moved. It could still be in the same location. But I take objection to calling for a straight line. There is no documentation on plans or deeds that calls for a straight line. There's no bearing associated with that distance, only a distance between corner monuments.
Is there some way that we can come to some sort of amicable? So Mr. McKeon wants to fix the wall. Is there any objection, Mr. Miller?
It's not an objection, I just, a couple observations, and I just want to point out, I'm not a licensed land surveyor in Massachusetts, but I've been surveying since. So I have some involvement in surveying and how it works. But just one comment, Mr. McKeon said the town hired an engineer to do the survey for land court. You cannot hire an engineer to do survey, you can only hire a professional land surveyor to do, and there's a huge difference between surveyors and engineers. So I just wanna make that clear. And I wanna know if Mr. McKeon has access to the petitioner's plan that was filed with that land court.
Petition. Do I have access to the town of Dayton's petition? I may have it at home, but I would assume that it is in the records of the town of Dayton insofar as it probably was the tax collector's office that initiated it in order for the redemption of the property to go back. If I said improper description, I'm just referring to the person, Mr. Francis Borden, civil engineer, who was actually hired by the land court.
Well, that was probably the company, but yeah, only a surveyor can determine property lines, engineers can't determine property lines, so.
I'm not disagreeing with what is said here, I'm just saying that the land court has accepted this. Relative, if I may just respond to, every time a property is registered, it is required that there be a land court plan, which is looked at by the judge together with the description of the deed. A new deed is created, and in every registered land deed, it says the plan is a part of this deed. And that says that in my deed, it says it in the Carton's deed. So the plan is a part of the deed. The plan shows stone walls, it shows straight lines.
Is this the plan that you submit here?
Yes, if I may approach. It's right after my deed, sir.
This is the one you're talking about?
No, it is not. That is Mr. and Mrs. Carton's plan. Mine is in the very, very beginning. Right here. Okay. So this is the name of the land court engineer who prepared the plan. And if you look at the deed says all in accordance with the plan.
Yeah, but that's your deed, so your deed clearly states a lot.
Yeah,
That's what I stated earlier, there's a difference between the two deeds. I agree with you, your deed
This was
clearly says.
registered, is what he was saying.
yes, but a court of law has agreed with that. That's really not subject to dispute as to whether it is or is not, because that is a straight line. And if it was not a straight line, as this property line is not, it would be annotated as to where the angles are. And this is virtually straight. This is only like a degree or two off in two locations. So absent, if you don't have an angle or a corner, it's a straight line. And if you look at
I'm fully agreeing with you that your property, your deed says it's a straight line. No doubt there whatsoever. The question is, on their deed, it says stone wall.
So,
So-
can I just understand this too, that if that stone wall fails towards Mr. McLean's property, you're saying that because in your deed,
It's a max.
you own that extra space, because in your deed it's the wall. But if that wall tips over, then you've got a little extra property there, because it's supposed to be the wall.
But that,
I just want to understand that.
that would be a different scenario.
Okay.
We're not dealing with a collapsed wall.
And I agree.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I understand it, correct. I just want to make sure I'm repeating that, so I can clearly understand.
Yeah, that would be a
And I
different
think in that
scenario.
corner, I mean, it looks like it failed a little bit, I mean, it looks like it's failing, right? I mean, the rocks are kind of moving a little bit, I just don't want my backyard or a rock moving.
Yeah,
It's
frost.
just the way it is, right? I mean, it's. That's just what it is,
Typically,
right?
Yeah,
So,
we don't know when it happens.
we don't know what happened, right? That's why
We
the
don't
liking
know.
came up, right? So the
We don't know
liking
whether it was-
conversation, whether it's a year or 10 years or 600 years, we don't know.
Well, the only thing I can say is I did hear that, awesome and scary at the same time. I did look at it, and it cleared as far back as we can see. The only changes I saw the septic system going in, and I saw trees removed on Mr. McKeon's property. That's it. Though there's a rock, I looked today, there's a rock that's on your property, Mr. McKeon, that is in a picture from 3 years ago. That's one of the rocks from the wall, is sitting on the ground. So it's at least a few years.
Right.
It's nothing that happened, and I certainly do not think it has anything to do with the septic installation. So,
Yeah,
If I may-
that's fine.
if I may, getting back to what I was saying, is can we come to a solution here? Because this.
Oh, I wasn't quite done talking when I.
Sorry.
So one of the statements by Mr. McKeon was that the drill hole's been moved 6 inches or so. The only way to determine that is to measure from one of the other drill holes, and I believe the plan you have shows that at the Kane property in the back right corner is a drill hole, and I don't know what's at the front out at Pleasant Street. But if there was a direct measurement made from there to there, and if it was 100 feet, and the deed says it's supposed to be 100.5 feet, then we know it moved. Mr. Roberts did not measure that distance on his plan. We did not measure it today, because I didn't realize there was a talk of, I would have brought my tape measure up there, we could have measured it, but, that it had been shifted by 6 inches. That would be a very easy measurement to make, because where he was holding his string was 6 inches to the north.
If I'd had my
where the
hand
drill
on the
hole was.
spot, we couldn't really.
No,
it wasn't
but
efficient.
on his end, he was holding like 6 inches north, implying that the drill hole shifted 6 inches toward him. And I personally, without taking a measurement, I wouldn't wanna make any assertion one way or another on that.
Right.
But
So
walls,
I'm not a surveyor, neither are any of these people, and that's not what we're going to accomplish here today. We're lay people, and we're trying to make a decision to that make everybody come to an amicable agreement. As a layperson, I can see, look on Google or whatever, is clearly a bump. I don't think anybody would have ever purposely put a bump in a property line. I can't think of a reason for that. But it's there, it's been there for a very long time. Mr. McKeon has expressed that he was willing to pay for changing the wall, fixing the wall. It looks to me that is where the property line probably should be. I'm not a surveyor, but to me, that's what it looks like. Do you have objection to him simply making that wall a straight line, like 2 feet off of your property?
I personally don't have an objection, but there's other issues along the way that I object to.
If it's relating to fences and walls, please tell me.
It's not related to fences. Well, actually, it is sort of related to the wall. Because of the bamboo that's planted along his stone wall.
Mhm.
We purposely
I
put
saw
it there a number of years ago. Due to the fact of that back area, as you can see, is not as manicured or as attractive as the front of the house. So therefore, he decided, without permission or anything, just putting up that bamboo to hide. So now it's intruding underneath the stone wall onto our property, which is going to encroach on the septic system if we don't take care of it. Or if he doesn't take care of it.
It's gonna
Yes.
damage your septic,
Actually, that,
the roots.
may I ask
Yes.
Mr. Billing for your opinion on that? Do you think that
That's.
You mean the root system from the
Yes.
bamboo is gonna.
We have
intrude over,
pulled up a number of roots
Okay,
during the course of time.
and it's gonna compromise your.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have addressed
I'd like
that.
to ask Mr. Billing's professional opinion as Board of Health agent.
yeah, so bamboos have shallow root systems, so they may not get into the system, but they'll start, obviously, it's gonna grow all the way over on top of the septic system, so it's gonna take a little while, but they may start cutting off oxygen and that kind of stuff. And at some point, it may interfere, yes, not as much as a giant oak tree would interfere, because those roots go like straight down and would decimate the septic system.
Generally
This is
speaking,
gonna be creeping from the side.
generally speaking, and not counting these people, every other person in town, do we have any restrictions on planting trees on the property line? For that very reason?
No, however, bamboo is an invasive species, so that's a different animal altogether, that's something you have to take up with like Division of Fisheries and Wildlife or something like that, because I think that's an invasive
But
species.
generally speaking, people are allowed to plant
Yes,
right up to the edge of the property.
absolutely. the thing is, as soon as like a branch goes over somebody else's property, they have the right to cut off that branch and all that, so.
Right.
So any bamboo that grows on their property, they can remove it, but they can't go across the property line and remove it on his side.
So are there any other objections that you have other than bamboo?
I could go on and on and on, but my main objection is the bamboo. We've addressed it to him, but he's totally ignored it and hasn't come to any decision as far as I have.
Well, I saw a fence going up a good deal along the line of the wall. Maybe proposing, extend the fence, get rid of the bamboo, and let him fix the wall.
I'm okay with
You
that.
have something, they give you something.
I'm okay with that.
How would you feel about that?
With all due respect, bamboo is not an issue for this meeting. It
Of
has-
course not.
Let him speak, please.
The only issue is what is contained in my letter, and it relates to the bulge. Number two, the bamboo has zero effect on the stone wall, which is the purview of the fence viewers. The bamboo has no effect. I'm
I
just,
simply was making a suggestion,
Suggestion.
that's all. You're absolutely right. We are not the bamboo police.
Yeah.
Uh,
that bamboo has been in place for at least 17 years. That septic system went in 2 years ago. That bamboo was never an issue until the septic system went in, which they put right next to the property line.
Well, the septic system went through an approval process and it was put there legally, properly. There's nothing you can say about, they didn't do anything wrong with the septic
I
system.
have no complaints about the installation of the septic system. They only have started complaining about the bamboo 17 years after it was put in, when they put the septic system in 2 years ago.
Let's stick to our wall.
Thank you.
Can I back up? When Chairman asked you if you would be amenable to allowing your neighbor, Mr. McKeon, at his expense to straighten out the wall, you said yes. Stop there. Let's go back to that statement. Are you willing to consider that? You brought up other things after the fact, but I'm gonna stop when you said yes. Is it a yes?
At this point, we have to talk neighborly about this. Because I'm not willing to accept it right now. Because what I just discussed is apparently not on the agenda, so we have to talk about it.
No, it can't be on the agenda
I know,
because it's
I
not
understand.
It's not,
You asked me
it's
the
not part of
question.
the purview of this board.
I know.
We're not a court.
I know,
I mean, what I really hope
so do
this
I.
results
So
in you
are you-
guys not ending up in a court. I don't want you to do
No,
that.
no way.
Are you worried that his fixing the wall would change your property line at all?
No,
So you're not worried about it going too far on your
I
side?
could care less about it,
Okay,
personally.
right.
It doesn't, it's not an issue to
And
me.
if you,
If I may say this clearly, basically, these. Okay.
That is not
I
true.
don't believe, no, I don't think it's.
And I take offense to that.
Well,
With all due
from what I
respect,
see here, you
I
two
have-
are yelling at each other.
I have said nothing to the Canes. All my comments have been addressed to you. All right?
so,
It's a fight between you two. You're disagreeing about bamboo, you're disagreeing
Well, I could
about
disagree a
stone wall.
lot further, but
Exactly.
it's
let's,
irrelevant right now.
let's
So,
keep it
but
clean here,
to
let's try
get
to
to
keep
the
it at least
facts.
clean. So,
Is,
if, you guys mentioned liking for time frame. I mean, do you like the aesthetic look of the wall? So if he said, hey, look, we'll keep the stones that are there and we'll put those on top so it still looks the same, but we'll just straighten it out a little bit. I mean, is that a problem? I don't know, are you worried about it being a whole new wall and all that stuff being removed?
It would appear to me that the wall can be restored
Yes.
and still look old,
I'm fine
and
with that.
still look the way it does.
I'm totally,
Then I will go back to my
so
original
then why are we
question.
here?
You said,
why are we
actually,
here?
yes.
If you're okay with putting up the wall, why are we fixing the wall? Why are we here?
If the scenario is when the question was asked by the chairman, you initially said, yes. Let's just stop there for a minute. Let us assume that yes continues and the wall gets
Straight.
straightened out, okay? That does not prohibit you from discussing with your
No,
neighbor,
it doesn't prohibit us.
whatever.
Yes.
But since we're focused on the
I
wall,
understand.
and I agree with what you said, stone walls move, no question about it. And when a stone wall moves, it doesn't change the deed. I mean,
Let's take the property line.
exactly, so it would just appear that from what I saw, and I'm looking at these pictures that were given to us, said before, I think what we're talking about is straightening it out, get rid of the bulge, neaten it up, but it isn't gonna look like a brand new, every little nook and cranny filled in. It's gonna look like an old stone wall.
Oh, sure.
Is that what you're talking about, Mr. McGinn? It's gonna look like an old stone wall.
I'd like to have the wall resemble exactly as it is in the other areas that are undisturbed.
So again, I will ask, is that something you would consider a yes?
I would consider it.
But when will we know? Because this board is looking for a resolution.
I understand that.
It's a matter of trust. Mr. McKeon has not been trustworthy over the years. Just a year ago, he brought a lawsuit for $14,000 against the Kane with a claim that a tree from the Kane's property fell on his house, when in fact, the tree was a lime tree.
So I have to stop you. This has nothing to do with.
But it's a matter of trust. It's,
I did not bring a lawsuit.
This has nothing to do
No,
with.
but with all due respect, I have a reputation in this town, okay? And I have been accused of supplying stolen documents by this gentleman.
Which I told him to stop.
Yes, not until he already mentioned it and it's on YouTube. He's calling me untrustworthy.
I just told him to stop. I can't stop him immediately, okay, but I'm doing the best I can.
What clearly happened was a branch from a tree on their property, on a tree that they were intending to remove, fell and damaged my house.
This is
I-
not the matter,
But,
this is
no,
not
but
the
they
matter
said,
we're
he just,
discussing.
I want to clear up for the record if I may. He stated that I sued the Canes for a sum of money. I did not sue the Canes for a sum of money. My own homeowner's insurance company paid a tremendous amount of money to fix the damage to my house. They brought a claim in what's called subrogation. Once they pay a claim, they're allowed to go against, and you know what happened? Their insurance company paid my insurance company.
So it was between insurances,
Exactly,
not
but-
between two
but
neighbors.
they were wrong because their company paid off.
Can we get back to,
Oh,
where are
please.
we? You said, so we're all, I go back to when you
I know,
initially
I-
said
I-
yes, and I'm not,
I back up, I'm backing up.
I'm not trying to pressure you
I
into
know.
saying
Don't
yes, yes,
pressure me
yes.
right now.
All I'm saying
We have to
is,
discuss things with Mr. McKeon
but
first.
fixing the wall
Yes.
will not prohibit discussing. Since what we are all here to talk about is the wall, the request about the wall. And all we're trying to do is to come to a resolution
Yes.
on what can we do about the wall.
But I have other resolutions.
All right, but
And I
not, they
can't.
don't come to this board
I
yet.
know that, I know, so I have every right to not agree to anything right at this point, and I can't.
So I can say this, if you have that opinion, you're most likely going to end up in court. And I don't wanna say
I'm
the
not gonna
only
end up
person
in
that wins
court.
is lawyers.
All I'm asking is for one thing to be removed, is that bamboo. I've asked him before in the past, that's all I want. I've been dealing with it, saying nothing for years.
May I suggest that maybe if you allow him to fix the wall, you'll start
I
building a
highly
relationship and
doubt it.
perhaps he will.
They
be
won't,
more-
they won't, he takes pictures all the time of our property, things going on, what we have, I know.
Yeah, so it's stick to the.
Just as a thing here, if we do decide that they're gonna fix this wall, my question would be, where is it gonna be fixed to? There is a drill hole that's there, but are we gonna be moving that drill hole to a new location? And if that's the case, we need a surveyor involved.
Yeah, it can only.
And that's why, so I don't wanna just say, yeah, just go ahead and fix the wall, because we need to know where it's gonna be fixed to, and obviously, I think there should be
Yeah, if we're not-
clearly marked on where the wall's gonna end up.
I completely
Because
agree.
You're a licensed surveyor, right?
And
no, I'm not
you-
licensed, I'm retired.
Oh, you're retired, okay.
I'm not accusing Mr. McKean,
So
but they may
understand the
push the wall
process.
2 feet the other way, when the masons do it, because they may just think that's where the straight line is, and I just think it needs to be established before any work gets done.
Right, and survey supersedes, it says this is exactly where that property line is.
But I don't think there's been a survey on either of these properties in decades.
There was a surveyor there for the septic system,
Who is that?
Mark Rodericks.
He's a mechanical engineer, not a surveyor.
Right, so a surveyor supersedes an engineer. An engineer goes out there and goes.
Engineers do not establish property.
And what's established, right, he looks at this and he says, okay, well, here's the plan. So.
So the engineers don't establish property lines. So he may have hired a surveyor to do
And the
survey.
surveyor comes in and it looks at his registered property and goes by everything that's registered and legal and accepted by the state. And looks at their deed at the same time and look at both properties. And he's gonna come up with measurements.
And then you look
Say,
at monumentation also, which
based
is
on
full.
measurements and everything else, here's what we do, and then he puts a stamp of approval on it saying, here's where the property line actually is. 6 inches this way, 6 inches that way, he's gonna tell us what he's gonna mark. Right? Right, if I understand that correctly? Yeah,
Okay,
and I think if that happened, and let's say the wall is on your side, wouldn't you have the legal right to fix it without permission?
If it was completely on
If
your
it were
side,
actually, if it were completely, you know, if it's halfway, now you're gonna go back to the table and discuss, okay, a third of it is on yours still, or 50% of it's still on yours, and you're gonna get back to the point.
the argument of is it a straight line versus is it only.
Correct, so I guess my point is, if we can't come to a solution, if they can't come to a solution, then
the land court.
you have to go to land court.
Um,
No?
I think. There was a drill hole already there. The location of the drill hole is a very small distance from where I held my end of the white string line. Right? It's on the wall of the Keynes property, which is their western boundary. Goes into that L shape. There's another drill hole at the other end of that. I'm satisfied with just building the wall to the location of the current drill hole.
Okay.
Because it's close enough to where it resolved. But I would also point out that according to your responsibility as fence viewers, if you find that that's not maintained, and it should be maintained, it's not just my cost. If they break the fence, they break the wall, they damage it, they're supposed to fix it at their cost, right? There's a joint responsibility for the maintenance of the wall. I stepped forward to do it myself, all right? They blocked that by putting up a no trespassing sign within the bulge, which I think the board agrees comes onto my property. There's a no trespassing sign. It's the only reason I involved this board, because I don't want any trouble with the law by working on something where there is a dispute as to the ownership of that property. Additionally, there wood, if you call it that, it's all rotted, but there's a big pile of cut wood there that's right up to the wall within the bulge, which I would have to move. And I don't want to have an issue with being accused of moving someone else's property. So I came to you to ask that it be repaired. I think the cost at least should be shared, if not the Keynes to pay. I was willing to pay. I think at the very least, it should be split in your order. Thank you.
I've heard it. You guys, you guys have any questions?
I would have one more question as to how far down on the wall would this repair be made? What's the distance that we're looking at? We're only looking at a few square feet. We're only looking at a few square feet of property that this bulge makes up. Is it just to straighten the bulge, or is there intent to do the whole wall?
Towards the, so from
All the way to the
back of the
street.
property towards the street, you're saying, so how far would you just do the corner, or are you gonna do 15, 20 feet?
I don't think it's as far as 20, but I'd say it's at least 10 from that current drill hole. If you take a look at your pictures, I'm gonna say it's about 10 feet.
Alright, so you don't plan on going as far as the bamboo? Because the bamboo looks like it's 20 feet, 25 feet from that back corner of the.
Where you were holding the string, I will not be, definitely not, I I would not want it repaired to that distance,
Okay.
but towards, from where you were standing, I think the bulge probably starts about 5 or 8 feet closer to the drill hole.
You see. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
It's more than a few,
As far
it's more than a few square feet.
I mean, and if you guys can be in the back corner kind of looking at it, and if you go over and say, hey, listen, here's about where I'm thinking about going to, and you guys see where it is, and you have an idea, and it goes 10 feet over, or you can stop it before it goes, and say, hey, listen, that's kind of not what we agreed it would be to about here. I mean, is that fair, right? So you can have some open communication on that corner and just say, listen, all right, if this is what you're thinking, Bill, okay, you say, fine, go ahead and do the wall.
One of you could just come out and put a marking or a ribbon on a rock somewhere as the starting point.
So we have,
So we're not.
so moving forward,
We could acquiesce
if
to
you
that
have
point.
agreed, and you have agreed that it's at this rock, and you're gonna move to the corner, then we can go out there and say, all right, we're gonna officially gonna mark the rock, just to say that's what you both agreed on. Right, and kind of fair, so you guys are gonna have to have some discussions about what you feel is fair, prior to us coming out and saying, all right, this is what the two of you agreed on. Just so it's clear moving forward, so there's no argument later saying, no, he said that rock, you said that rock, that sort of thing. I mean, we hate to get in the way like that with neighbors, but if that's the way it goes, that's fine. If we can help keep it, Bill, is that okay with you? I mean, if once you've said this rock and they've said this rock, that we at least have,
I would put a mark on it, but I would also like you to consider as to whose responsibility it is to repair the wall and who bears the cost now that we're at this stage. And the statute clearly says that.
Getting back to the discussion, so this is a picture here, this bamboo over here. What I would suggest as far as markings go is if you find a point where the wall is okay, and then you put several markers on the Kane property on where the extent is going to be, so that a mason looking at this knows, don't go any further beyond this, but also the two property owners can agree. I'm thinking of those stakes you have at winter time to mark your driveway if you're gonna get plowed, you know, those metal things? But that would seem that somewhere within the area we're talking about, if they were put there, and the neighbors on both sides of the wall agreed, then if the mason is going to do the work, it's clear, don't go beyond this point. I mean, that's a fair thing.
So I think that would be a huge step forward if we could accomplish that.
Well, it also identifies where the wood would need to be moved out of the way so the masons can work.
Yes.
And that would be a huge
And the no
step forward.
trespassing signs.
I think you're right, that the no trespassing signs are most likely on this property. And I would ask that you please remove them.
No problem.
But the other thing too is this is a commonly owned stone wall. So it would make sense that they equally share in the cost of it.
I agree with that.
I mean,
However, there's also the, how long has it been this way? There's a statute of limitations of just how, I agree, if a tree falls and knocks the wall over, it's their problem, they gotta take care of it. The same for you, if your tree falls or if you back your car into it, it's your problem, you need to fix it. It's a common shared thing. But when we're talking about the wall kind of shifts, how long is it before we both say, if they don't care that it shifts, why should they have to pay for it?
Exactly.
Because there is a legal requirement for common boundaries to be jointly maintained by the common owners.
Right, so
There is
then-
no statute of limitations
right,
at
so
all.
if that's the case, what if, you want a mason, and he comes in and says, it's gonna run you 15 grand, and they go, I'm not paying $7,500 out of 15 grand, and they say, you know what, I'll go out there and have my grandson do it,
You do it
and they'll
themselves.
fix it straight, and then, you know what, it costs just the grandson $500, because the grandson comes out and earns a few $100, then you're not gonna be happy maybe with the solution because of the way it looks, but it solved the bulge. So I think then there has to be some open dialogue between the two of you as to, okay, and listen, neighbors are from different means, I don't know either one of your means, so I don't even wanna go there, but to force an expensive repair on somebody, if it doesn't need to be a $15,000 fix, and I'm just throwing that number out, I have no idea.
No, but to my understanding, when this first happened, when we discussed it, there was no involvement of us paying for anything. To my understanding, you agreed to take care of the whole thing.
But please address,
Well, he had said that, he was gonna do it at his expense.
Yes,
Until,
And now we're oscillating a little bit until,
Does anyone have any idea, even a ballpark, what it would cost to remove the bulge and kind of straighten things out and end up with an old-fashioned looking stone wall?
you had a mason, right? Did he give a number?
it's under 1,000.
$100,000 to fix that bulge.
So, in addition to, if I may respond to Mr. Easterday's remarks about having a grandson do the job.
Right.
I think the more appropriate thing is to have, each party, obtain an estimate that would include the cost, the, time of completion, which would be a certain time, and also what the result would be, all right? I would like to have a mason rather than an unskilled person, because anybody can pile rocks. The result should be to have a wall that looks the same as all the rest of the wall, all right? Whoever would get the lower of the estimates might be the one to go with. I got an estimate for 1,100 and they got one for 900, and they can do the same work in the same time period, fine. One of the things the fence viewers are required to do by statute is when making an order, you have to say in your order when the date of completion will be. So it's not an open-ended thing like get it done, then 3 years
I
later
think I
it isn't done.
overestimated the extent of the work. When I said $15,000, I had no idea. $1,000, I had no idea, right, so I was just throwing that out.
I agree that whoever does the work, if it's going to be done, is a party not involved, a relative of anybody on either side of that wall is the problem. No, it's got to be a personal opinion. If I was co-owner of this wall, I would want a qualified mason. I want the wall to look like an old stone wall. It's not gonna be like the stone walls we see built in new homes, you know, and every nook and cranny is, no. You want it to look like the way it should look. If there were any way, literally, to put your arm on the bulge and do this, shh.
Yep.
That's what you do, all right, but we know that isn't gonna work. I think my personal opinion is if the two parties can come together as far as marking the area where the bulge is gonna come to here and not go any further, that they solicit cost, come up with a cost, and agree to share in the cost. They both own the wall. I realize the wall moved, but you know, that's kind of a Mother Nature thing. But only that, if you looked at the wall on both sides as you walk the property, it is not a fixed wall. It's a freestanding wall. And
What do you mean by fixed?
cement, hold and glue it all together. It's a typical New England freestanding stone wall. And in places, it goes up a hill or it goes over a rock, or there are rocks coming up out of the ground. And the stone wall sort of ends and there's a rock, and there is mobility there, and there will continue to be mobility there forever. But I really think, again, with my description, if you could put your arm here, move it over to where the line is marked, get rid of the bulge, so that the boundaries meet. I think it's the best solution. It's gonna take the agreement of both property owners.
Well, that brings me to my question is, if they just can't go out there with the arm, what kind of equipment are these masons gonna use to move the wall? Because some of those stones are several hundred pounds. So if they're gonna be using heavy equipment to do it, I mean, there's a building right there too, so I don't know how they're gonna be able to get at it. I think that should be worked out ahead of time.
I think
As
that
part of
comes
the
off
agreement.
the estimate maybe.
Yeah.
What equipment's gonna be used, are they gonna be, on your side, where are they gonna be? I mean, we're just trying to open some dialogue here too, so you guys can kind of.
So I just think that needs to be worked out before they start work.
Yeah.
But that would be part of what the mason would put into the,
You get a clear expectation on that.
yeah,
I bet I think after the wood gets moved out of the way, they'll get a better idea of what that base of the wall looks like too. So,
Right.
And one more comment, since we mentioned base stones, if the base stones show the bulge, the base stones didn't move. The top of the wall is what would be moved. So if those
I
base
thought we were
stones
already
indicate
past that.
If it's all part of the bulge,
part of the bulge,
then
but
part of the bulge
it's
has to
called-
be fixed, right? So
the
based
deed
on.
calls, go back to the deed calling for the wall. The wall was always in that location based on
And
the
if he's got a property line that says it was wrong then, and now it's on his property, then he's gonna go up and fix it, and you're not gonna have to say.
does everybody agree this should get resolved, straighten out the bulge in the wall and just resolve this? Or is this, I mean, that's my question, that's what we're here for, to try to figure out what is the best way to resolve it, and every time I think, my opinion, we're making some progress, all of a sudden, then it's something else. So, is the intent to get it resolved? Not the bamboo, not the limbs, nothing else. The stone wall, which is the thing we're trying to deal with.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
Even if the base stones,
Agreed?
right, so then eventually it's all just gonna get
But I don't
straightened out.
understand why I have to pay for all of it,
You
or
know,
half of it. I just,
the-
because he agreed the first time.
Yeah, but you said yes the first time and you withdrew that, that's behind us now. It's a common stone wall,
I
you
understand.
both own it, okay? And you're saying now,
Because I don't want it to go to court.
I think I'm hearing from everyone, we want to get this resolved. This board is here ready to make a decision, I believe, but we are hoping the decision we make is going to be acceptable to the property owners on both sides of the
Right.
wall. This is the goal, okay?
To do this friendly, don't want to be a hammer.
It doesn't mean
If I
whatever
may-
has
can I-
happened is forever gonna be resolved, we're only
I
going to
understand.
the wall.
May I give a what if, wait,
Sure.
imagine if there was an earth, right?
Oh my God,
Imagine,
oh my
okay?
God,
And the stone wall fell over all over the place.
shifted on their side,
Whose responsibility is to pay for it?
Yeah. be all mine.
No, it wouldn't, no,
No, it, for
it'd be
sure,
both of you.
we'd find legalities of everything and then it would end up being all mine.
I'm suggesting that
I know.
because it is, Mr. McKean is correct, that it is a shared wall, it's a
Yes.
shared expense.
But we're not sharing the bamboo.
I was
I don't
very
want to share the bamboo.
hopeful when he said he would pay for all of it, but he brought
I
that offer back. So, he's right, it is a shared expense, it's a shared wall.
Can the next step be, we put I call them snow stakes. You gotta move some wood back,
Yeah, I can move the wood back.
and we put some snow stakes on your side of the wall, and both parties agree.
Yep.
That looks about right, that will, if the mulch can be moved back to the stakes, that's what we wanted to have done. In the meantime, you can contact a mason, he said he contacted one, and get a price. So now the mason can look at something and say, oh, you want me to move this thing back to here? You say, yeah, that's what we agreed on, this is the patch of wall we want you to fix, so that they can give you an accurate cost. Then, once you have all that, the next step is, are you willing to pay your share? But can we at least take steps? Marking, you're gonna remove some wood,
Yes,
and it's agreeable that some snow stakes will be put in there, which will determine where the bulge is gonna be moved back to. You're gonna contact a mason or two, whatever, and they can come out and look at it, and with a now defined area of work, give you a price.
I know what equipment's needed.
Right, so if we could, can we put this in the form of a motion? That we could issue an order with?
I don't think everything's gonna be resolved today, but we can take steps.
That's what I'm saying, let's
So,
make a motion for the first step.
Mr. Chairman. I move that wood on the north side of the boundary stone wall be moved back that stakes marking the line of work to the north be installed on the gate property. And that both parties get estimates from a mason for the area of work, including labor, materials, and equipment.
And what type of equipment?
Yeah, everything will be in there, okay? That's my motion.
That's.
No, we have a motion on the floor right now. Hold on. Second. Motion made and second. Any discussion?
I would ask that you amend to add two things to it. One is to additionally remove the no trespassing signs,
She already agreed to that.
We already-
but
We already determined.
it's not in the motion. And secondly, to set a time by which the estimates must be obtained and shared. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna do that on a separate motion. So I will amend where I
So,
say,
are you gonna do a separate motion then?
no, I'm gonna do the timeline different, separate.
Okay.
Right.
So you're
I
gonna.
wanna amend the original motion where go back to where I said the wood will be removed.
Yep.
And the no trespassing sign will be removed.
So add
So it's
that,
kind of lumped
you're gonna
together.
put that in.
Yeah,
Wouldn't it?
and then the rest is part about the stakes, that's okay. And the estimates, and again, including labor, materials, and equipment. So that's an amendment to the motion,
Motion made, seconded.
okay.
Motion on the amendment made and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're back to the
Original
Original
motion
motion.
as amended.
as amended. Any discussion?
Aye.
Aye.
Right,
It's
now-
unanimous.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we establish a time, a deadline for which we need information on the cost to, I'll call it repair the wall, for lack of a better term. What's a reasonable time frame to get an estimate?
Well, first off, I think there needs to be a timeline for them to move the trespassing signs, maybe then one for them to move the wood so that they can then do the estimates, because if you just put it on the estimate and they don't move the wood, then obviously we have a problem.
Well, it's the first thing that has to happen.
Yeah, so I think the trespassing signs, I think would be number one, number two would then be move the wood, then the third thing would be the estimate, and then the fourth thing would be have the work done.
Okay,
So
then,
that can be all part of the timeline motion.
exactly. Withdraw the second, no, withdraw the motion and start over.
Alright, draw my second.
All right, and I withdraw the motion. Okay, so, what is a reasonable time period to, take down the sign and move the wood? 30 days?
30 days sounds good.
I would request a week.
2 weeks.
How about we cut it right now? It's 50-50.
She said 30 days, and I like that one, but 2 weeks is
I
fine.
don't have a problem, I'm looking for an agreeable time period, that's not, I haven't made the motion yet.
So you just start.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out what's reasonable.
Respectfully, I am a seasonal resident here, and I will not be in the state about first week of October. Excuse me? Pardon me?
Please address it,
Mr.
but
Chairman.
just, yeah, just keep
I
going.
thought it was a remark addressed to me. And putting it 30 days out to do anything is the end of September.
Well, we're just 2
I would-
weeks, that's what I'm
But I
talking
would
about,
like
2
to
weeks.
be able,
That would accommodate your timeline. 2 weeks, and that's right in the middle. You said a week, they said 30, so if we go 2 weeks, that's right in the middle. That gives you time before you. That's
Thank
all.
So 2 weeks to get the stuff moved, and then how long after that to get it?
2 weeks for the sign and the wood.
Both of them.
And put the stakes in, because once that's, once that's done,
So the fence viewers need to go look at those stakes.
I think so.
We'll have somebody go out and take a look at
One of us.
I'll make a suggestion, we'll do discussion. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we require that the wood be moved, the trespassing sign be removed, the wood be moved, and the stakes marking the area of work on the north side of the wall be completed by September the 8th. The reason I picked that date is because we closed on the 9th, and it would be good if Mrs. Shetner had the information, so she can let the board know the work has been done. Is it reasonable to ask that you, within that 2 weeks, also get a mason to look at it? Do you think?
That I can't guarantee.
Yeah, we can't determine what the
Okay.
basis schedules are.
Okay, all right, so then the motion stands as it is for the information be back to Mrs. Shetner by the 8th of September.
Motion,
Yes.
second,
Motion made and seconded, any discussion? Vote.
Aye.
Aye.
So that was the timeline just to get the wood.
Just to get the wood,
the
the
stakes.
stakes and
Stakes.
the signs.
I would request
I would, yes, I was gonna say, I would request that
Yeah, I
in the
would
meantime,
request
contact Masons.
that, yeah, and if you can provide that to Mrs. Shetner as soon as you can.
And if you also let us know when, I mean, I know we have a deadline, but if you let us know when it's completed, I'd like one of us to go out there and just see the stakes and see that the stuff is removed, so that we can proceed to the next step. So you just inform us.
I hired a mason to fix a little stone wall area along my patio. It took him quite a while to actually come out and do it.
That's why I asked for you to contact somebody
Yes,
ASAP.
I mean, I can get somebody, but I'm not saying that they can come September.
No, contact them and
Yeah.
find out when they can get there.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you do what you have.
Yeah, get your estimate, get a time frame.
Well, not that, she can't get an estimate until the logs are moved and the stakes.
We're saying you gotta move forward to put those things in motion, because if you said they can't get out there for 2 weeks, well, you're doing your stuff by the time you get out there.
Then we should not be getting an estimate before we view the stakes, okay? But call somebody and, say, just like Eric said, I can go look at it in 3 weeks, well, at least you got that clock ticking, okay?
The only thing I have left, there's no public input, correspondence, or anything else. Before we adjourn, we need to set a meeting.
No, I've got other things to talk about.
Okay, all right, I'm all
We
set,
just say if this matter is finished for now.
yes.
You guys have anything else you need from us at this moment? I suspect that what the general plan will be is that after we see the line, we'll be looking to get those estimates. And then we'll probably have another meeting like this and go on with what are we
What if
doing on the wall.
it's, I'm just speculating, perhaps if I couldn't get someone together before October and Mr. McKeon is out of town?
Let's just see what you can do.
Absolutely.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Let Ms. Stephanie.
Let me know, I'll pass.
Checker.
That was no in, I can check.
I want to put it in. Yes, Mr. McKeon.
You'd be so kind as to schedule a continued date of the meeting, so we know when it is that you will be next meeting.
I wanted to hold off on that until we knew when the estimates were gonna come in, because I can't see any value in us meeting prior to getting estimates. What do you think?
I would like to see if you could schedule a meeting within the next 1 month and see where we stand at that point.
Mr. Chairman, when I said about setting a meeting date, my thought was if we could meet, I'll set a date the week following the 8th deadline. And if we don't have information, we can reschedule. So,
about we could put it after our normal meeting, I've got a meeting,
No.
No, you do not?
No, we are the 7th, and then, because we go up into the 3 weeks, so it's
Okay.
September 7th, and then the 20-something is the 3 weeks.
if we scheduled it, if we scheduled it for example, the 12th, which is the Monday after the date we have set for the information, the what to be moved and so forth, so on.
That gives time for someone.
Yeah, and Mrs. Schechter can check to see if the information is there. And if they don't have the information, she doesn't have to post until the 8th, correct, the Monday meeting. And then it'll be a matter of, she can get in touch with you and come up with another date.
Okay.
But if we set a meeting for the 12th, if there's sufficient information for us to meet and discuss it, we can go with the 12th. If we don't have the information we need,
That's fine, so we'll set a date, but if there's nothing to talk about, we're not gonna have.
the other thing too is, we will have Zoom capability, I don't know what happened over there.
Well, this is still recording,
Oh, is
sure.
it?
There's only anything.
Okay, but, we, as long as you have a computer where you're going to be, we can have you Zoom in.
You can zoom in. Okay, so can I have a motion for the next meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we set the next meeting for Monday, September 12th at, what's it gonna be, 9 a.m.?
Yeah.
9 a.m. And place to be determined, depending on availability of meeting space.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, is there any other concerns that you folk?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I'd like to, we're, nothing to do with you guys. Address the question of Fields Drive. That happened in past days.
Sorry, not on the agenda.
That's okay.
It's not on the
It is
agenda.
totally okay to discuss, this doesn't involve any place, it involves just us. And
It's not on the agenda.
it's an unanticipated item. And I'm just simply discussing what the nature of the board is.
Yeah, we have, but I want to point out what happened when I put an unanticipated item on a stormwater committee meeting. And I considered it an emergency.
I understand that,
The
this doesn't
response-
involve any
The
person.
response from the Attorney General's office was,
He's
you
not-
had time to schedule that at another meeting. And even though you considered it an emergency, we don't consider it. My response was, am I gonna get fined?
Yes, and you and I have discussed this in the past, and I agree, if there was something involving somebody, then yeah, I would completely agree with you, this is just our board, it's nothing, doesn't affect anybody. Okay, and there was an event that occurred that, so we have been created as the board of fence viewers and field drivers, okay? We just heard a case about the fence viewer, okay, but there's a slash field driver. I simply want to make a statement of what field driver means and what are we going to do about that role? Field driver
that's a
is supposed to
discussion.
be,
It's a discussion, you can make a statement, you can't discuss it. We can certainly put it on the next agenda.
It seems to me like you're saying, hey, this is something you wanna be talking about, so find some research what the state requires, let everyone come back
I
to
know,
the next
I know
meeting
what
and
the
then vote.
state-
Oh, you
I
do,
know
okay.
what the state requires. But.
Cause I don't know, I've never heard the term before.
There was an incident that occurred a couple of days ago, where there was pigs walking down the street. Okay, now that is the very definition of what a field driver job is.
I'm so sorry to intrude. What are the chances you guys will be done by noon? Because we do have
We're gonna be
a
done in like
set-
5 minutes or 10.
Perfect, yeah, less.
Thank you.
So I simply wanted to clarify, what is our role? Because as you had mentioned, you know, this interacts directly with the animal control officer and her responsibility.
In the Board of Health.
And the Board of Health. And I would like to clarify what is the purpose of this job. And either we should be doing it or it should be removed from our purview. And I'd like to take it up, my guess is to take it up with the board of selectmen. Any thoughts?
Referring to the pigs.
No, referring to, well, I guess.
I think it's coming up with pigs, I
Situation.
don't know if I'm qualified to go round up pigs.
I don't think I am.
Yeah,
Right, I mean, I could, like but
What I'm saying is I would like to go to the board of selectmen and
have
ask
some
them,
specific guidelines on
get
what our
specific
role is.
guidelines as to what the role this board is in terms of field drivers.
I don't wanna get into a discussion because I think it's wrong. I will make a statement. When these two positions were created, I believe it was colonial times, there was no animal control officer, there was no dog officer. It was probably run a Department of Agriculture and all that other stuff. And so this was a necessity going back to colonial times. As things have evolved, we have a State Department of Agriculture who is directly responsible for the animal inspector, who can be, or doesn't have to be, the animal control officer. And in history in this town, going back to, I'm gonna say, 2007, when I joined the board, we didn't have an animal control officer. We had a dog officer. And I insisted we have an animal control officer because the dog officer wouldn't come out for any other kind of animal. And it got to the point that sick cats or wild animals that were acting strange, who's gonna take care of them? Nobody, because we didn't have anybody. But I think the kind of duties that our maybe historically all-encompassing would have been if we were in colonial times has changed rapidly because of changes made in state government and in town government.
which sounds like a good reason why it needs to be defined now.
That's exactly what I'm saying, so
Pull back.
what I'm asking is, would either of you have any objection to me putting an agenda item onto the board of selectmen to discuss what is the role exactly of the field driver?
No objection.
Objection.
That was all I wanted.
All right.
So I will take it up with the board of selectmen and get the role clarified.
Did you have something?
That, no,
No, but they said field driver falls into Board of Health, animal inspector, animal control.
Yeah, that was
So
something.
that's why I figured I'd stay when you said field driver, I wanted to hear what it was.
So I'm, from my research, what a field driver is the person, if there are loose livestock on the street, it is the field driver's job to go round up that livestock, put it somewhere, in safekeeping. And then there was also an issue of possibly fines being given out because the person let their pigs roam or something like that. And that's in the purview of the field driver. And then, so he handles that, but it's all about livestock, he or she. It's all about livestock. It's not about
That's
dogs or
fine.
cats.
So I'm curious to hear what the selectmen have to say.
So, but I would suggest that I personally feel that it's probably gonna be CEO's purview, and we should probably just remove it, but if it's up to the board of selectmen, if they want us to do it, we're gonna have to learn that. So, with that, I will,
I think what if we, personally, I think we ought to maintain the two titles. But I also think that be a resource for the Board of Health. If Stacy says, I need help,
I mean, we'll do it like that, and it'll be just a backup.
you know, set, motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
motion made and seconded, any discussion?
not discussing.
No, then no
Discussion.
discussion,
Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Don't
adjourned.
forget to stop reading that.
Are they taping it quickly and set by models?
Don't know. I thought they were lunch.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
They're probably kind of their lunch.
Well, I think they have lunches, I don't know. Tables, dining tables.
Let's go over here.
Yeah, the pig comes over here.
When we came in, there was nothing in the middle.